Marquita Garner-Walters, Secretary for DCFS. That was one of the highlights that happened in the audit, saying that Louisiana did not have a designated entity responsible for case management and coordination of human trafficking. Everybody thinks that's DCFS's job. So let me be real clear. Our job is to investigate abuse when a parent is culpable of sexually trafficking their child. We are not law enforcement. We're not investigating the perpetrator. We're not an arresting agency. We are simply to investigate, was the parent culpable, and to keep the child safe. That is DCFS's responsibility in the human trafficking world.
Thank you, Senator Barrow. Senator
Thank
Mizell.
you. Introduce yourself. Yes, I know who you are. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Eugene Collins. I'm the president of the Baton Rouge branch of the NAACP. I have been working alongside Ms. Porter, who showed up in Baton Rouge one night looking for help. I want to say this here. As I sat here this morning, I listened to the department head of the Department of Children and Family Services tell us what her job was not. I couldn't help but think back to our mission statement, which is we fight race-based discrimination. But when a person shows up in the middle of the night saying that they have a kid that's been sex trafficked, although I didn't have the resources to assign somebody to look into such a case because I didn't have anybody with that background, I decided to look into it myself because that's what you should do in a situation like that. In addition to that, in sitting with Ms. Porter, I found that Ms. Porter had made complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint for a number of months, and none of those complaints had been sustained. Not one complaint was sustained until I decided to put Ms. Porter on my radio show one Sunday. And then after that, that complaint was sustained. Some short time later, Mr. John Mack was arrested as a result of that complaint Ms. Porter had been trying to file for months. Mr. John Mack is the uncle of one of your colleagues. I have sent you guys, with some of y'all, an investigative document totaling somewhat 40 pages of all of our findings. Findings that were not looked at or overlooked since 2015. This young lady had been trying to be heard, trying to have her voice heard, trying to have this situation looked into, and nobody did. They wouldn't even take the complaint. So when someone sits here and says that it's not their job to be an arresting agency, but it is their job to be an agency that accepts the complaint, and that did not happen in this process whatsoever. This is a systematic failure that needs to be monitored at a greater level. Because we can't sit here and talk about what our job isn't when kids are being sex trafficked. And we can no longer say that Ms. Porter isn't right because arrests have started being made. This was a failure, and somebody should be held accountable for it. Thank you.
Don't move. Come, Senator Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
We are not going to come in and take over an investigation in Livingston Parish.
No, I understand.
Or in East Baton Rouge, or in Rapides, Caddo, or anywhere.
I understand that. I'm not talking about the investigation of the molestation. I'm asking who in this state, whether it be state police, attorney general, when someone files a complaint, has a complaint been filed against these departments?
Yes, ma'am. So, and there's a little bit to add to it. Livingston Parish actually closed the investigation. The investigation was just reopened after some media came out recently. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, the sheriff in Washington Parish also received a complaint from Ms. Porter. The sheriff in Washington Parish, as a result, decided to schedule a visit with the supposed man that was trafficking her, John Mack, the uncle of one of your colleagues, to come to her facility to visit the child that he was trafficking.
He scheduled what? I'm sorry.
A visit with the child.
So I'm about to ask this.
And we gonna probably have to.
Yeah, I'll
we're
deal
gonna
with it
probably
off
have to
the
take some of
record,
this
'cause
off
this
of the
is
record,
crazy.
because it is still open, and so Senator
I
Munson.
got contacted by the sheriff in my area who asked me could the rapist come and visit the child.
In your
Alleged
area?
rapist, Washington Parish. Like we ran into so many different barriers, like nobody was listening. And at this time, Mr. John Mack was coming to the facility with the child's biological mother and trying to gain access to her. It wasn't until we had a meeting with DCFS that we had a Zoom meeting, because the child had told DCFS that if she's forced to return to that environment, that she would just die in peace and kill herself. And at that time, we made a meeting with DCFS via Zoom, begging and pleading them to intervene, because at this point, we have reported more than 10, 12 times to get some help, because every time her biological mother, who we know is the person that was trafficking her and allowing her to be abused by Mr. Mack, they're coming to the facility, and we're trying to do the right thing by doing the reports. So every time they come to get her, we're supposed to give them to her. And so we literally had to be put in a position to where ethically and morally we're like, no, you can't, we're not gonna do this. And so we would have to run them off from our facility. We would call law enforcement to come. Washington Parish sheriffs have had to escort him off the property several times. And it just got to the point to where after the DCFS Zoom call that we had, they said Livingston Parish had closed the case, that the FBI was not involved. It was Mr. Craig Miller on this Zoom call, and a few other people in the investigations department of DCFS, and it was Kathy Kusimo from Children's Advocacy Center in Hammond, who has been a very big advocate for our girl, and she even begged him, please, she begged them, look at her interviews. I've met her, I've looked at her interviews, her and her sister, because she wasn't the original cry out victim, and she was not. And we had, it was at that meeting that they told us DCFS could not get involved, that when she's to be discharged from our facility, that she is to go back to her family. And I think that is when desperation kicked in for us, because we had looked this child in the face and said we were going to protect you. And that's how I ended up, like, the help didn't come until I contacted Governor Edwards' office at the child trafficking office. And it was like my last ditch effort. I mean, this is the night before, after the man is at our window with flashlights looking in the windows.
So wait,